Okay, so it's been a while since I've done any AFL content on the channel, but the AFL has been rocked this week by a drug scandal. Now, this all came about late on Tuesday evening Australian time, so it had been early lunchtime, up lunchtime UK time where I am, when federal MP Andrew Wilkie used his parliamentary privilege, whereby he stated that the former Melbourne Demons doctor had sent documents to him basically discussing how clubs and the league basically are protecting players who come back with basically positive recreational drugs tests in their system. Now, the whole system is based upon self reporting by players. So, this is the league basically regulating itself. And if they say to the club doctor, hey, I've been out on the source on a Friday night or a Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and I've taken some drugs, can you just see if it's in my system? They get sent to an independent facility that is not a WADA or an ASADA testing facility, and if they come back with a positive, they're told to, hey, you fake an injury like a hamstring or a calf strain, or you've sprained your ankle, you miss a couple of games, then you come back into the lineup. Now, what is very, very interesting is the drugs policy has been in place since 2005. It was updated in 2015. They used to have a 3-strike policy. Now they have a 2-strike policy. And of course, this is on the back of what was happening at the West Coast Eagles, and especially Ben Cousins. Now, Ben Cousins never actually failed a drugs test in his career. However, he was deregistered by the AFL in 2007. He made a comeback with Richmond for a season or two. He has had his own off-field issues, but there were other players and reports of players in Perth at the West Coast Eagles basically partying all the time and taking a large amount of illicit substances. Now, my view on this whole situation is quite a dim one in the sense of the cover-up aspect. In regards to the player welfare aspect and getting treatment and getting help, I think that is important. But it's come at a time when we've got a new CEO in place in Andrew Dillon, and already, he's under the spotlight, having to answer questions and deal with this. Bearing in mind, the AFL's had, obviously, the Ben Cousins situation all those years ago. That actually made headlines over here. The Ben Cousins situation made headlines over here in the UK. It was reported over here when it was all blowing up and he got deregistered. It made international news. Now, the self-reporting side of things, self-regulation doesn't work. We know this. So basically, it relies on the players being honest, and those players going to the team doctor saying, I've done something stupid. This is what I've done. Coaches and other ex-players have come out saying they weren't aware of any issues. Coaches are like, well, we don't really know what's going on. The team doctor has said that this player's done his hamstring, has got a slight side strain, he's got to sit out a week or two. That's what coaches are saying. It puts a lot of spotlight on the Melbourne Demons organisation, which they don't want, as this is the club that is named in the parliamentary privilege. But it's basically all clubs are doing this because the cover-up aspect of the drugs testing, where the players are taken to a secret non-WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency location. They are tested with the AFL's knowledge. The AFL basically would rather keep it in-house under wraps. It's now come out. Now, one report says up to 100 players could be, regularly using illicit drugs. Other reports are saying that number's quite a lot lower, somewhere in the high teens to low 30s. I think it's somewhere in the middle in regards to players. I don't follow the AFL as religiously as I used to, I will admit that, but it does raise some eyebrows. We have seen in other sports and other leagues players fail drugs tests with recreationals in their system and they take the ban. We've seen this in rugby league with Zach Hardacre. I'll use him as an example. And we've seen other leagues, let's say in North America, who have their drug and wellness policies where players are put into programs like the NFL, like the NHL, for example, the player welfare kind of drug and rehabilitation policies that they have in place, and they go by various different names. We know Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens, their world-class goaltender, will never play again. He's going under with prescription medication and mental health. He's under the player, rehabilitation program in the NHL. The NFL several players, high-profile players, including Pat McAfee, who has his own YouTube channel and his own show on ESPN. He's been in the player rehabilitation program with the NFL because of alcohol. And he had a very famous incident where he drank too much and he got done by the police for public intoxication, and the league put him through a mandated program where he had to basically give urine and blood samples with no alcohol in his system. He wasn't allowed to drink. He had to go through basically a rehabilitation process. There is no self-reporting in these leagues. Players basically have to fail drugs tests or be, very open and public about I'm entering the player wellness program. Here there is basically a cloak of secrecy and a cloak of cover-up. Now, what is interesting, if there's federal money involved in this. This is what a lot of the reporting in the mainstream media seems to be missing out on, is because they've signed up to the WADA code as a league, and they have a WADA representative and testers going to test players at games on match day weekends and in season. They get federal funding. This federal funding can be used for grassroots projects and infrastructure projects like improving facilities, building new facilities, upgrading facilities, and also player pathway projects and improving the grassroots game. So they're getting federal money by being signed up to WADA. Now, the NRL does not have this kind of policy in Australia, for example. Neither does the A-League. So if a player tests positive with recreational drugs in their system, it's pretty much the same as a player testing positive with performance-enhancing substances in their system. I'm going to use Bronson Sherry as the example. He failed a drugs test at the beginning of the 2020 season, just before COVID. He has basically missed the last 4 years because of that. Michael Jennings, another player, failed an in-season drugs test, got a lengthy ban. So I'm using them as examples in Australia of players who have failed with drugs tests. Now, they had performance-enhancing drugs in their system. They were cheating the system by doping, but there is no self-reporting. So this whole system relies on the players putting their hand up and saying, I've been stupid, etc., etc. We do know that there's a couple of ARLW Sydney Swans players who were caught with drugs. We do know that players have been caught in possession and caught on camera on social media by members of the public using substances, and we know that there is clearly an issue. Clearly there was an issue back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s with the West Coast Eagles. This is why this drug policy was brought in. However, before the season even started, the AFL PA, the Players Association, and the league and club executives were going through basically saying we need to update and change this policy. This has now come out. Now, the whole cover-up aspect is what is raising the eyebrows. Of course, patient-doctor confidentiality should always be respected, so this is a grey area. But basically, it's a policy that's got a lot of loopholes in it. It is a policy that has been updated since it's been in place. But only one player has been actually banned through this policy. And that's because the police got involved. Since the policy's been in place, other players have been caught, with illicit drugs on them outside of testing, in the general public, for example, on a night out, and they've been caught or accused of using, and they get a mandatory suspension from the league and a fine from the league, but they've not been outright banned for lengthy periods of time. So we'll see what comes of this, but my take on it is, I think there's a lot of inconsistencies with the policy. I don't know the policy well enough, and I haven't researched the policy well enough, but it has had a lot of fallout. But the majority of players don't misbehave. Those players that do have those mental health and addiction issues obviously do need help. It's a societal problem, and I speak from the heart with that as someone who has battled drugs and alcohol before I had a YouTube channel. Even since I've had a YouTube channel, I've had issues with alcohol and drugs. I don't drink anymore. I don't use drugs anymore. I've had health issues because of that, and I've been very open about that. And if you've been a long time subscriber to the channel, you'll know. So, and I went to meetings. I had to go to meetings. It was mandated by my doctor. Either that, or there would be a court order. So I had to go to my rehabilitation meetings for a period of time. I had to go through basic Addicts Anonymous. and that was through my doctor saying I had to do this in order to avoid a court order, basically. So those players that do obviously have addiction issues obviously do need that kind of help, that kind of support. There is that mental health aspect, but those players that are just recreationally using are putting the game at risk. It's the image that the AFL wants to project to the world. That this is a league that has a very I would say champagne socialist kind of PR kind of machine. They're very, very keen to say that they're an inclusive game and all this, and they have all these specialist rounds. Almost every round seems to be a women in league round, and pride rounds, and indigenous round. They have all these inclusive kind of rounds and themed rounds and projects. They want to be seen as socially aware and all this, but they're covering up players who are abusing and misusing recreational drugs. Now, the debate over recreational drug use and whether they should be on the ban list of substances and whether they should be legalised and decriminalised is a wider debate, and we have debated before on this channel, especially on live stream, about should drugs like cannabis, cocaine, MDMA, amphetamines, tranquilizers, whatever recreationals that are being used, should they be on the ban list? Is there enough of a performance enhancing element to them for them to be on the ban list? We've seen Olympians, for example, fall foul of testing positive with metaboloids of cannabis in their system. We have seen players test positive with speed and cocaine in their system. We know this. This is a global sports issue. This is not just an AFL issue. It's also a societal issue as well. So those things are out there and in the public domain and in the debate. But it's the secrecy aspect and the fact that the league is covering up these positive tests and these players aren't getting bans. And there's a lot of those players who are playing clean, who don't misuse recreational drugs, and who want to be at the peak of performance and want to be the best they can be. The Players Association and the league have basically said the system isn't working effectively. There's too many holes in it. It has this self-reporting aspect, and they are the only league that I think of that has this self-reporting aspect. It's enabled the cover-up side of things, and I think that's where the fans at home will be watching, going, "Well, this player's missing a couple of games here," and we've had ex-coaches and ex-players coming out and giving their spin on things and their piece, saying we weren't aware of this going on. Obviously, the Melbourne Demons are the club under the spotlight in this particular instance, but their head coach has come out and said this is an AFL problem, this is not a Melbourne problem by itself. There will be players on other teams, self-reporting to the team doctor. The team doctor, under the current system, will take them to this non-WADA facility, get them tested. If they come back clean, they're allowed to play. If they come back with a positive test, they fake an injury. And that's basically what is sort of going on here. And the AFL apparently is fully aware, according to this federal MP, Andrew Wilkie, that this is going on. They're helping cover up player drug misuse. And it's the integrity of the sport. But that's my view on it. I think it's a mess. I think it's a bad week in the media for the AFL. I think the new CEO, Andrew Dillon, wants this to go away. They want to focus on grassroots participation and the growth in the women's game and attendances and winning the ratings battle with the NRL and that kind of thing, and being the dominant sport in Australia. The profits that the league is making the competition that the league has, the fact that they've had combines out in the US and they're now getting American players to play, all the Irish players that are coming over that have played Gaelic football. They want to talk about all the positives and the growth of the game, but still, we come back to it, and the AFL still seems to have a recreational drug use problem. I'm not saying that the NRL and the A-League and other professional leagues and sports around the world don't. We know that there is a percentage of players that do abuse recreational drugs. We know that's a thing. There's been rumours going back to the 80s involving like the NHL and the NFL and the NBA, and stories come out, and we know that players have been suspended and have been caught. We know that in European football there's been a whole host of players who tested positive with cocaine and speed in their system. Obviously Carlo Caniggia, and of course famously Diego Maradona, Adrian Mutu, if you follow European football over the years. We know that rugby league players have. Zach Ardaker is a prime example of a player who's tested positive. So we know this goes on in other sports. They don't have this self-reporting, cover-up kind of angle of things. I think we are going to see the AFL's drug policy completely, as it currently stands, scrapped and a new system brought in that is a bit more rigid. And I think the Players Association and the clubs are going to have to be more transparent. There's going to have to be some soul searching within the playing group and within clubland to say this is not good enough. So that's my take on things. It's been a messy week for the AFL. It's now reached parliamentary level. Politicians have now got involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if more stories come out and more allegations come out, where it's going to be interesting if a current or ex-player comes out and said, yes, my drugs test was covered up by the league. When that happens, when an ex-player or a current player comes out and says, look, I had a drug problem or I was misusing drugs at the time, and the AFL helped cover it up, or a player post-retirement has health issues or mental health issues and basically takes the league to court saying, well, you helped cover this up, you didn't get me the help, as long as I didn't fail a WADA or an ASADA test during the season, you didn't care, as long as you protected your image. We could see litigation from current and ex-players down the line as well. So it's a bit of a mess, really. So we're going to have to see when they announce their new drug policy framework sometime in the middle of the season what it looks like. But this can't continue as it is. Now that we know that the league has been alleged to have covered up positive test results and player misbehaviour, that it's not a good look. It's not a good look when you're trying to grow the game with female fans, with female players. We know female players have been caught in possession and fined from the Sydney Swans. It's a mess. So we'll see what happens and we'll see what comes of it. But that's my take on things. And there we go. So not the AFL video I wanted to make if I was to make AFL content, but it needs to be discussed. And this issue is not going away for the AFL. The media are on it now. It's snowballed. It will be interesting to see if current and ex-players... I would think ex-players coming out and saying the league helped cover up my positive tests. That will be interesting when an ex-player has the bravery, I do think this, to take on the AFL and say, well, you helped cover up positive tests by telling us to, via our doctors, to fake an injury and miss a game or miss a couple of games to therefore avoid the official testers. And this, again, involves federal money. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the AFL drugs scandal and their drugs policy below. It'll be very interesting to see what AFL fans have to say about this, and sports fans in general. But for me, for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.